and away we go. All right. Well, welcome to the Wealthy Ironworker podcast. This is going to be another bonus podcast episode here on the platform. Now, really quick, I want to take about, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes and kind of give you let's say a 30,000 foot overview of what you can expect from us in the next, let's say, 4 months. We've got a lot going on. Now, up until this point, for those of you who have been following along on the website, excuse me, what you have seen is articles, and articles are great. And I don't intend on, stopping the articles anytime soon. As a matter of fact, I'm going to increase them. For those of you who've been following along for the past 3 years, what we have done is put out, let's say, goals. We've established goals, and we're still very bullish on goals, and I'll still continually push them routinely. And at the beginning of each year, we have set goals. And this year, I've set what I think are probably the most achievable goals for me personally on the website and, of course, in the podcast space. And one of them was, it's been 3 years in a row now to at least publish 2 articles a month. One of those articles being the monthly checkup and review. And the reason why is primarily it's because it's a way to kind of reinforce, which is what I want to do, the importance of goals. I think there's a lot that, most people don't set goals, and I think that your life would be far more richer if you did. So there's a lot going on there. And anyway, while I was in pursuit of another goal, which is the book reviews, I was reading, I'm still reading it, right, by the way. I'm taking my time on this one. It's James Clear's Atomic Habits, and it's a really good book. I'm only 2 chapters in. But in the beginning, he talks about where, basically he was writing like twice a week. And I'm just like, now the little bit I've explored, his writings, they weren't as, let's say, wordy. They were, let's say, brief snapshots. And maybe that's something that I need to explore. But one of the things that we're going to do here on the platform is we are looking at maybe increasing that goal to about 3 articles a month. And in addition to that, we're also, I was working last night on a newsletter. I have to flesh out the particulars about what it's going to look like, what we're going to augment, what we're going to expound upon, etc. But a newsletter, I think, has the ability for a lot more traction to, and also to spotlight certain things, which is a great segue into the next section, which is what you can expect on the podcast. Now, the two are inextricably linked. The podcast, as a matter of fact, is, at least in my mind, an extension of the website. It has been from the inception, and it will likely be so going forward. We write substantive content, etc., that I want it to be like an anchor. I want it to be something that people can come back and work on their personal development and read, internalize, and take it, and then propel their life forward. So the podcast is a standalone entity, but it certainly is, from my mind, an extension of the website. And the spotlights that we're going to put into the newsletter are going to turn into spotlight series on the podcasts. And here's what I mean. I've got 4. And before I go over them, and I may forget to do this towards the end of this podcast episode, but if you have an idea, if you have a thought, you think, okay, well, maybe I didn't hear him talk about this. I think that maybe there's some validity in what I might have as far as an idea. Maybe you've got, look, your idea might be the next great thing. I don't know. If you feel like your idea needs to be discussed, you need to let me know. You can go over to thewealthyironworker.com/contact. It's the contact page on the website. You can fill out a form and let me know. I actually want to hear them because basically the more comprehensive, let's use that word, the more comprehensive we are on the podcast space as well as the website going forward, the more people we can help, the more of the industry we can help, the more people can sit here and say, okay, well, I can see what he's talking about. I can see how it's very helpful, and we'll kind of go through that. So the first spotlight that I want to talk about is actually going to be the first one that we're going to explore. And this is going to be probably the most popular. It's at least the most popular that I'm aware of based upon my, one-on-one conversations with people, and that's the apprentice spotlights. I cannot tell you the number of apprentices that have expressed interest in coming on the podcast. Once they found out that not only do I have a podcast, but I'm, on a regular basis, we're continually pushing out not just clickbait stuff, but substantive conversations. I've had multiple apprentices say that they were interested. Now, a real quick caveat for the apprentice spotlights: this is not limited to just ironworkers. Just because my trade happens to be an ironworker does not mean that it's limited to ironworkers. And as a matter of fact, I know that there's going to be some electricians and some pipe fitters for sure. My brother's a pipe fitter, and my other brother is an electrician. So we're a trade family. So I know that I can lean on those connections as well as the ones that I've made in my time in the trades. But if you are you're a millwright, you are a crane operator, etc., there's going to be opportunity from an apprentice spotlight perspective here on the podcast for you to contribute. Because we want to know. I want to know what the apprenticeship has done for you. I want to tell people how it's helped you out and how it could potentially help them out, and so on and so forth. And obviously, by collateral, it's going to help out the industry as a whole. So it's a rising tide that lifts all boats, if you will. So going forward, the Apprentice Spotlight series is going to be a relatively robust conversation piece that you're going to see within the next probably 4 months. To be honest with you, you will probably see it within the next 2. You'll probably start to see things within the next month or 2, probably 2. So it's March to now, so I would look for definitely a Apprentice Spotlight episode to drop sometime in May. I want to, have not a robust catalog of podcast episodes, but at least have some. And quite frankly, I want to get better at the whole podcasting thing. You start talking about, let's say, for example, recording, the audio portion, the video portion, the editing portion, all of this stuff. And all of the videos have gotten better over time, which is exactly what, you kind of know that this is going to happen. Well, I want the Apprentice Spotlights to be a mainstay. And so I wanted to kind of flesh out some of the stuff before. So by May timeframe, you're probably going to see some Apprentice Spotlights. I need to develop some questions. And again, if you got some questions or some comments, feel free to go on over to the Wealthy Ironworker and let me know. Another spotlight. So I got 4 spotlights mainly. Another spotlight is going to be company and contractor, company/contractor. Maybe you are a pipe fitting outfit. Maybe you're an electrical outfit. Maybe you are a crane and rigging outfit. Maybe you are an ironworking outfit. Whether you're doing reinforcing or structural or industrial maintenance, whatever it happens to be, I've got in the works, in the idea phase, to have contractors and spotlight them where you're at, what you're doing, what's your trade, and what do you see the industry doing? And what are you doing differently? Are you doing something differently than somebody else that might say, well, that's a really good idea. I like that. I'd like to be able to take that and use that in my own practice, in my own business. So that's another spotlight. I need to develop questions that I, can kind of prompt and ask, and then, we just carry the conversation long form. But that's definitely going to be coming up. A third one is going to be industry spotlights. Now, let me highlight industry for a second. Now, typically when I say industry, what you're probably thinking, and this is what I mean in one way. For example, I have been in contact and communication with several different manufacturers that would like to sponsor podcast episodes. They would like to give away some free swag, and then I'm of course going to use that free swag to do some raffling and whatnot. Basically, I'm just going to give it away. I'm a pastor. I'm a conduit. Things are going to come and flow through me, information as well as some swag, and it's going to flow through me to you. And this is going to be how we're going to get a more robust conversation, subscription list, etc. So that's one way that when you think about industry, you think, okay, well, he's talking about that kind of, manufacturers. I am indeed. However, that's just one side of the coin. Industries comprise more than this. And the one that pops in my head right now, and this is a good time to segue into this discussion, is I am also in communication with a lady that she's a national training director, but she focuses a lot on the mental health aspect, more on the suicide portion of it. That's an industry spotlight. I will have her on this podcast. I will lean on her expertise that she can bring to, to the audience, to people listening, watching. And I suspect that it's going to be a really good, robust interview between her and I, that we're going to talk about the things that you can see, and then I'll kind of prep the conversation about the difficulties of the construction industry and how we have the second highest suicide rate from an industry perspective in the entire country, the construction industry. That's going to be a good podcast episode, but it's also an industry spotlight because she represents an industry that needs to be talked about. Now, a quick caveat before I move on to the last spotlight, the mental health series. Since we're talking about what you can expect from the podcast and website in the coming months, I have, as of right now, about 4 to 6. I have to look at the spreadsheet, but I've got about 4 or 6 different podcast episodes / website articles slated discussing mental health. So there's at least 2 of them that I'm aware of that I talk about in one-on-one conversation and even in small group settings. But we're going to talk about some things on the mental health aspect, on the side of mental health, that I think no one else is talking about. We don't. It's very interesting to me to note the mental health space and our, the decline in mental health, the issues, if you will, and how I've routinely said this in podcasts. And website articles. But and I've also said it in podcast episodes too. If you want to try and address a problem, then you need to understand as much of the problem as possible and then pull out all solutions, at least possibilities. Let's acknowledge this. Acknowledging is the word I want to use. If you don't acknowledge that you've got a problem, or you don't acknowledge the complexity of the problem, or you're unwilling to acknowledge the severity of the problem, or, and this is a big one, you're unwilling to acknowledge various portions of the problem that seem to have good fanfare culturally, but no doubt have a detrimental effect on your mental health as a whole. And so you find yourself then, whether you're the construction industry, which is where we're going to park our plant our flag and talk about it, or you're in a completely different industry. This little nugget here goes out to anybody. You could be in the office, you could be in retail, it doesn't really matter. Culturally, there are things going on that have a negative effect on our mental health, and no one is willing to talk about it. You often feel like you are between a rock and a hard place. And so I want to get better at everything and all the delivery, because I want the mental health episodes to be like an anchor. I want them to be episodes that people can come to for years to come and engage in a good, open conversation that's going to help them out. That'll help open their eyes, if you will, to things that not everybody is talking about, and that they can sit then and then use those same talking points to help other people. I don't want to do the content a disservice by putting out a poorly recorded or poorly written set of articles or podcast episodes. So that's another thing to look forward to, by the way. So just keep that in mind as you are coming back here and you're consuming the content. And the last industry that I want to end this podcast with is going to be a very good one, because I think this has a lot of traction too. I want to talk to entrepreneurs. I want to talk to people who don't just dream. I want to talk to people who dare. I want to talk to people who see and this is a throwback to one of the previous podcast episodes, but I want to talk to people who don't just dream and they don't just follow bad advice about your passion. No. They follow opportunity wherever the opportunity takes them. They see the opportunity and then they seize upon the opportunity. Those people have an entrepreneurial mindset and spirit. And as such, I want to talk to them. I want to have conversations about how did it go for you? You don't have to give me any trade secrets or anything like that, but give me some information that the audience, you, the listener, or the watcher, depending on where you're consuming content from, goes, that guy or gal, they're making me think. They are bringing something to the forefront that I didn't think about. They are talking about pursuing opportunity. They are talking about how they were trying to break into a specific industry. They were trying to capitalize on opportunity, etc. And so from an entrepreneurial mindset, we call it here at the podcast, we're going to say entrepreneurial spotlights. I want to know your company. I want to know where you're based. I want to know what you do. How did you get into it, etc. And, some of these questions are going to be very similar to the previous ones and the previous spotlights. But the outcome is going to be different. And the outcome is going to be highly valuable to you, the listener, as well as me. So, there's a lot that's going on here that I think is going to be beneficial, and it's going to be, from a developmental perspective, there are going to be some really great podcast episodes coming up. So, all right. So let me wrap this up with a little summary here. Some of the things that you can look forward to, whether on the website or on the podcast. Website side first, you can look forward to more articles. I haven't quite figured out exactly what that's going to look like yet, but more articles. I'm pretty sure that we're going to lean into at least one more article a month. You can also look forward to a newsletter. That's probably coming in the next couple of months that we're going to really kind of push that out. So we have a fairly robust amount of information that we can push out in a newsletter. There are apprentice spotlights, likely to be very robust and substantive as far as guests, but apprentice spotlights. We have a contractor / company spotlight. I want to talk to you guys as well. We're going to have industry spotlights. Industry spotlights are going to be very, very interesting coming up. One of probably the more popular, and unfortunately in a negative way, but one of the more popular podcast episodes that we have slated here, maybe a little bit longer than 4 months out, is going to be mental health. Look for that. And then I'll also turn those into website articles, because they are that important. And lastly, I want to talk to entrepreneurial mindset people with an entrepreneurial spirit that have just done things. Rather than dream, they actually do. So in the next 3 to 4 months, some of this is earlier than the others, this is what you can expect here on the podcast. And again, I did remember, if you have something that you want to contribute, you have a question you want asked, you have a recommendation that you think is going to be beneficial to us here at the podcast, please don't stay silent. Take the time, reach out, get that information to me, and we'll go from there. All right? All right. Well, this has been another bonus podcast episode here at The Wealthy Ironworker. Thanks for listening.